This story is about a young, crazy, but handsome plant guy who's about to embark on a plant journey like never before. Experience things like he's never experienced before, filled with love, passion, heartbreak, and sorrow. But is there a happy ending to his Philodendron Melanochrysum story? Let's find out. Just kidding. Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, we are doing a houseplant update on my Philodendron Melanochrysum, and then we're gonna chop this guy into pieces. Yes, that's right. We are gonna chop this guy into pieces, so that way we can do some node propagation and make a few more Melanochrysum. Now, for those of you guys who've been following me on Instagram, you know I've been documenting my journey with this Philodendron Melanochrysum. We went through a lot. You know, it was a beautiful plant when I first got it. I first saw this plant in person at the New York Botanical Garden, and I knew at that moment I had to have this plant, so I got it as part of my houseplant haul, rare and uncommon, earlier this year, pre-COVID, and this is the first year I began to really acquire a few more of these plants. That houseplant haul video included also my Ethereum clarinarium, my Chrysalinum, a 69686, a Philodendron gigas, and obviously this Melanochrysum. You know, when I first got this plant, I had a moment with it, even in front of you guys on YouTube. It was very, very special. This is a rare plant, and I just need a moment with my plant here for a second. And I knew at that point I really want to care for this one and get it to grow as big as I can, because, you know, seeing it at the New York Botanical Garden was truly mesmerizing. So when I first got this plant, I did everything right, which is first thing is to acclimate them. So I put them in the greenhouse, and then eventually I kind of weeded them off the greenhouse. So with the Philodendron Melanochrysum, I got a bit impatient. I ended up repotting this guy from a 4-inch to a 6-inch pretty quickly. Maybe I waited about like 3 weeks. And then the second mistake I did was the mixture I used wasn't airy enough. And then obviously I overwatered, and next thing you know, all the leaves were dropping, and at that point it became a Melanochrysum instead of my Melanochrysum. So I began to panic. I don't know what I was going to do with this. At that point, all I needed to do was just to calm down and stop dropping leaves, which eventually it did. But the problem now is I got this long vine, bare leaves, only leaves at the top, so I had to begin air layering this. And this is actually the first time I've ever experimented or tried air layering on a plant. So in a way, I was forced to kind of go through this experience and learn from it, even though it's at the cost of my Melanochrysum here. But, you know, I began to air layer this plant, and pretty much what air layering is you're trying to create roots out of a node while the plant is still attached to the mother plant. So that's what I did here. I picked a node close to the top where the leaves are, wrapped wet sphagnum moss, wrapped it with some saran wrap, sealed it, make sure that the moss is, you know, moist and consistently wet. You know, checking in every now and then just to make sure that that moss is still moist, so that way the roots can promote. Eventually, it did promote some roots, so what I did was I cut this guy off, and because the roots weren't fully developed yet, I want to still plant it in sphagnum moss, so that's what I did. I put it in a 4-inch container. You guys can see right here, it's still planted in sphagnum moss, but of course, you guys can see the vines kept growing, and then the leaves kept dropping, and still I only have leaves here at the top. So that is the piece I cut here that's planted in sphagnum moss, and you guys can see I started to create another air layering section, so that way we can repeat the process, cut this guy, plant it back into its own pot, so that way we can bring the plant lower and then from there grow. I think I'm beginning to understand more of what's causing the leaves to drop. Really, I think it was my overwatering. So I'm finally getting the hang of it, and these guys are now 3 leaves, and it's looking good. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wait till this new leaf kind of fully grows before I decide to cut this section off again and then plant it in the soil. Now, what happened to the mother plant when I removed the section I was air layering is it forced to wake up its dormant nubs that you guys can see here. These are typically located just above the node, and normally they're inactive, right? But when you remove kind of the plant or the section that where they focus their energy on to grow, it forces to wake them up, and that's what it did here at the top. You guys can see there's a new leaf right here, and this came from a new inactive growth point that eventually just sprouted out this past, you know, couple months here. So that was really exciting for me to see that. And if you guys see down the vine here of this mother plant, there's a few more growth points that's starting to wake up. For the most part, these guys would grow naturally on their own, but I did use some cloning paste on some of these just to kind of help wake it up. But I think what's happening right now is this plant has so much growth point that it doesn't know where to focus its energy. So that is why I want to start cutting these guys into pieces and then putting it in a humidity box to try and promote the growth points. And then, in a few months, hopefully we can have a few more baby Melanochrysum. So that is what we're gonna do. We're gonna head over to my station here. I'm gonna show you guys how I cut these guys, how I propagate it, and then within a week's time, we're gonna check to make sure that they are still doing okay. So let's go. All right, you guys can see here, this is the original mother plant, and this was the first air layering I did. So this was literally attached like this. Cut it, planted it in its own moss and its own container, and then has these 3 leaves now, but obviously I'm air layering right here in this section. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna put this guy on the side because this is the one we're gonna chop up right now, which is the mother plant. This is where it has a lot of these growth points that are starting to really wake up. And again, this was the first growth point that woke up, has a nice beautiful leaf, and has a new one that's actually coming out as well. So what I wanna do is, we're gonna chop this guy into pieces. So the first thing I wanna do obviously is, get yourself a nice sharp scissors, clean it. And what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna cut this guy really, really low to the base right here. I think I'm gonna do it right above, right here, just below right here, because there is a growth point right there, just below where I'm gonna cut right here. And then that way we're gonna start cutting these kinds of pieces. So I'm gonna snip it right now, right in the middle of those 2 nodes. Oh, no. All right, so now we're gonna just remove this guy. Okay, so here is the section we're going to cut into pieces. You guys can see this is a new leaf, and there's a new leaf coming out of that one. And that is the original growth point that kind of just woke up. And then from there, there's a few more nubs that's starting to wake up as well too. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna cut these guys in between each node and then put it in a propagation box. So let's go ahead and do that. All right guys, so we're gonna cut this guy in between the 2 nodes that you see there, just right in the center. And we're just gonna, 1, okay, and then there's right here again, we're gonna cut right there, the middle. This one is growing really well. You see that growth point right there, it's really woken up. And we're gonna do the same thing here. And then this one is kind of waking up, as you guys can see right there. And we're gonna cut right there in the middle. Okay, this we're gonna leave intact. So this was that growth point. And what we're gonna do with these guys now is we're just gonna leave them to kind of callus a bit for about 30 minutes before we pop them into our propagation box. And so we're gonna let these guys dry out for a bit. All right guys, so after you've allowed your cuttings to callus for a bit, whether it's 30 minutes or an hour, you want to get obviously your propagation box and put a layer of wet sphagnum moss here. You don't want these guys sitting in water or have too much water. You still want it to be evenly like moist or wet, but again, keep it light. And then what you want to do is place your cuttings with the growth points facing up. You just want to place it down, make sure those aerial roots are touching the wet sphagnum moss, and you want to do that throughout. Evenly space them out so that way they got some room, and then close this guy up and then put it in an area that gets a lot of bright indirect light. And within a few weeks or within a week, we're gonna check up on it, see how they're doing. The goal and the hope is for these growth points to just continue to grow, and eventually we'll produce new leaves like this one that you see here. What I think I want to do with this one is, because it already has new leaves and it has a new one that's coming out of this one, I thought about putting this in water and just waiting to see if these guys will root. But I've done propagation with this type of philodendron, like my pink princess, in water in the past, and it rotted and it didn't work. So I think what I want to do is I'm just going to place it in sphagnum moss in this 4-inch container, and I'm just going to lightly plant this guy in there. We're going to put it in the greenhouse, monitor this guy, and hopefully it will root. So that is the plan, and then again, we'll check up on this in about a week or 2. And what we want to do with this one is we're just going to leave this guy as is. There is a little growth point that's just above this node here that you guys see. And now that it has no other growth points to focus its energy on, we're hoping it will just grow from there and then produce a new plant. And then this one, the original first air layering, I think what we want to do is we're just going to leave it like this for now. I want to see if there's roots going to be here. If there isn't, I still want to wait till these leaves kind of maybe grow. Maybe wait for this one to fully harden before we start chopping this guy into pieces. Because in case this one doesn't work, I still have this one as kind of our saving plant. But yeah, we'll come back in a week and see how these guys are doing. So with the magic of YouTube, we'll fast forward to the future. All right, guys, I'm back, and my time machine was slightly broken. I thought we were going to do weekly check-ins, but instead, it's actually been about 6 weeks and 1 day since we cut this up. For you guys, it's only been a split second. So I'm excited to show you guys what these cuttings look like today. I want to start with the mother plant. If you guys recall, not that long ago, we decided to cut it back down so that way all its energy can focus on the growth points. And here's that mother plant today. Ta-da! Look at that new leaf. It's so beautiful and so exciting. Exactly what I wanted to happen, where all that energy can focus on that growth point and eventually produce this beautiful leaf that you guys see. It is starting to harden. When a Melanochrysum leaf does show up, it starts off like a salmon color and eventually it's going to turn into a nice velvety green, beautiful leaf. And it's so exciting, and I'm so happy that the mother plant is thriving. So this is the original Melanochrysum. I mean, yes, you know, 7 months ago, this was a beautiful plant, but I do know that this is going to turn into that beauty again. It's just going to take time. Yeah, so exciting. Now let's go check to see what the section that we air layered and that we potted into a 4-inch container looks like today. If you guys recall, we air layered this, the leaves started to drop, and then we cut it. But the one thing I also forgot to mention was, if you guys can see here what it looked like, there was only 2 leaves and there's a lot of discoloration that was happening. And that's because this also got attacked by thrips. So I had to really stay on top of my pest management to try and really eradicate as much of the thrips as I can, and eventually I think I got it under control. So this is what that plant looks like today. Ta-da! Look at this beautiful, beautiful leaf. So this is what a Melanochrysum leaf looks like, a healthy one. It's so velvety, it's so green, and it's so pretty, and I'm so happy about it. Now it did start to obviously grow a few more leaves after that, but you can tell this one right here isn't as healthy, and there's a bit of discoloration and a bit of, you know, not the right shape, a bit of deformed looking a bit. So that is obviously caused by pests. So again, as this guy is growing, I also do got to stay on top of my pest management control, but I'm just happy that it has beautiful 4 leaves. And again, this is that section that we air layered. I do want to check later to see what if there's roots on here, because we are going to cut this guy and then we're going to do a bit more node cuttings. But yeah, this is him right now. But for now, we're going to take a look at our node cuttings that we put in the propagation box. I think in my propagation video about a few weeks ago, I did show an update on this, and you guys can see right here there were still node cuttings, still the growth point was, you know, just slowly growing. And but yeah, so let's take a look to see what they look like today. And look at this, so exciting. So here you guys go. Ta-da! Look at this. There is a leaf on this one. So this was one of the nodes that had a bit more of the growth point that's already kind of grown out. And look how healthy it is. There's a nice, beautiful root that's also coming out that, you know, aerial root. And it's just beautiful. So exciting. Eventually, this is going to continue to produce more leaves. And then we're going to pot this up. So really, really happy to see this has a new leaf. And then the rest, this one is a little bit bigger. It doesn't have a leaf yet, but I think in a few weeks, this will be this guy. So it's exciting to see that the growth point is thriving. And then all of these also, the growth point is showing up and there's a bit of roots on them. So exactly what we want to happen with these cuttings. And it's so cool because, you know, obviously this is not the way I planned my Melanochrysum to be, but I'm kind of thrilled the fact that I can make a lot more and just using these node cuttings, and to see the growth on it, you know, it's really, I don't know, it's satisfying. Personally, for me, it's satisfying, and again, it wasn't expected. This is not the way I wanted things to turn out, but you know, I'm not mad at it. So really, really happy about the cuttings here. And now let's take a look at the top of that mother plant. You know, obviously at the top there was that leaf, and then we cut the nodes, which was this part, and then this was the mother plant. So that top leaf that we planted in a 4-inch container in sphagnum moss is this guy right now. Ta-da! Look at that. There's that beautiful leaf, and then there's also a leaf showing up right there at the back. It hasn't fully come out as much as I thought it would by now, but I think part of it is there just wasn't enough humidity, so that's why not, you know, it was only yesterday that I decided to actually put a plastic bag over this guy, which helps trap the humidity a bit more, and that should help push that new growth out, eventually start to grow more leaves. And yeah, so really, really happy. So we got this one as well. And then now what I want to do is repeat our process. So we have this guy that was air layering, and I want to just check to see if there's roots here. If there is a bit of root, we're going to cut this guy, and then we're going to cut all of these down, and we're going to create those node cuttings, put in the propagation box, and then we're going to try and wake up the nub that is planted with this 4-inch container, which is the base of it. So let's go ahead and do that right now. So I just want to check to see what this air layering looks like, and then we'll go from here. So man, this is so cool. I'm excited about it. I can tell there is a root because the sphagnum moss is attaching to it. Yeah, so I do see a root here. I don't know if you guys can see. Gonna move it right there. So there is that root. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut this guy down, And then we're gonna plant it back in a 4-inch container. So that is exactly what I wanna do right now. And you can see how wide this internode right here. So I'm actually just gonna cut below that, right about here. There we go. Alrighty. I'm actually going to, you know what? I'm gonna let this guy callus a bit before we plant it down here, but let's do that right now. So I'm just gonna place him down and then we'll come back to that. But what I wanna show you guys is this main one that we have right here. I actually wanna take this out of the sphagnum moss just to see how well these roots have developed. And let's just take a look. Oh wow, this is still a lot of nodes here. So we can probably cut this guy a bit more into pieces. So I think that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna actually cut this further down because there's still a lot of nodes here, so we can make a lot more. So we have it right here, and you guys can see that the moss is really attached to those roots there. So I'm not gonna like tug on this because I don't wanna rip the roots out, but we are going to actually bring this back lower. Originally, it was really deep, so, but I'm thinking I'm just gonna cut it right here. So that we can get one node here and one node there. So we can get about 2. And then we're gonna plant this guy back in the 4-inch container. So I'm just gonna cut this guy off right about here. Okay, I'm going to save that. And I'm gonna plant this guy back in the 4-inch container. I'm gonna plant it a little higher so he's not sitting way too deep. And then what I want to do is I'm going to put some cloning paste on that inactive node and growth point, and that way we can get this guy to start waking up. All right guys, so we cut this guy a lot further down than I had expected. So this was the top part plus this piece right here. So this we're going to plant in its own 4-inch container. This we're going to cut up into node cuttings and put in a prop box. And then this we're just going to leave in a 4-inch container. I am actually going to put some cloning paste on this growth point, which is that little brown dot right there that you guys see just above the node. And sometimes it's covered by an old stem or leaves. You kind of just need to peel that back and expose it. And then what I want to do here is I'm actually going to put a bit of cloning paste. Now I have used this in the past before, and it does speed up the process of trying to wake this nub up. You guys can find this on Amazon, so I'll link in the description below. But yeah, so that's exactly what we did. So again, we're going to place this guy in our greenhouse, gets a lot of bright indirect light, and then watch that growth point wake up. So really exciting, and eventually it's going to turn into this, the mother plant. So that is that. And now what I want to do is pot this guy in our little 4-inch container, so that way we bring it down lower, and from here on it can continue to grow. I might actually put a bit of a moss bowl, but for now let's just place him in this container with sphagnum moss. Again, I like using sphagnum moss lately to really help develop the roots, because there are a bit of roots here, but it's not fully developed to the way I want it to be. So I do just want to make sure that we are giving this guy a bit of a good chance to really grow and develop those roots, because like I mentioned in my little Ethereum video is, you know, without healthy roots, you're not going to get a healthy plant at the top. So that's exactly what I want to do with this one. And I am already thinking that, you know, if this continues to grow and, you know, once I start cutting these older leaves that are not as pretty, we might actually need to do some more node cuttings and eventually make more. So, but, you know, it's a process. So that's the cool part about this guy. So again, we're going to put this guy in the greenhouse, gets a lot of bright indirect light, and beautiful. Look, we now have a Melanochrysum plant that's not super high and tall with like all these bare leaves at the bottom. So yeah, pretty cool here. Now we are going to cut up our nodes similar to what we did not too long ago, well, or 6 weeks ago for me, for you guys not too long ago. Again, we want to just make sure that we cut in between the aerial roots. So we're gonna make 2 here. This is actually pretty big. And then we're gonna peel these old dead leaves or stems back, so that way we can expose the growth point. All right guys, so you can see now with these 2 node cuttings where that growth point was. And one was easier to tell because it's a little bit darker, the other one's slightly lighter, but I put some cloning paste on there. And now what we want to do is place this guy in the prop box with the rest of our other node cuttings that is doing really well and thriving. And again, you know, we want to keep this in an area that gets a lot of bright indirect light, that's warm, and you know, obviously close the lid to try and create that humidity and trap it in. And in a few weeks, we're obviously going to check this out. And man, this is so exciting. You know, like I said, I never expected that this is my relationship with the Philodendron Melanochrysum. Even though this didn't turn out the way I had hoped for or planned when I first got this plant, you know, it was one of my first rare plants. I think through this experience the last 7 months, I am really happy about it. I mean, during the moment when, you know, there was the crisis stage, the leaves were dropping, I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it. It obviously was heartbreaking, but I think eventually, you know, I've come to terms with the fact that, like everything else in life, experience teaches you things. You know, they do make you a little bit better, you know, after all is said and done. And yeah, I do think now I'm a better plant parent because of this experience. It's something that I've never went through before, and it's pretty cool. And I'm so excited. I mean, we had one beautiful Melanochrysum, but now we're gonna have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 Melanochrysum. So imagine that, look at it. But yeah, we're really happy. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, learned something from my experience, and enjoy the rest of your week. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.